Yo, homies, what's up? It's me, Mr. Mayfield. Today we're going to be talking about abundant elements in different parts of Earth. So we'll be looking at these three sheets right here. You can see mine's colored in. I'm going to explain how to do that shortly. You'll have a graph, circle graphs. You should have one for Earth's crust, Earth's atmosphere, and then Earth's oceans and living organisms or cells. So I'm going to set these aside and we'll go back to this first sheet. We got to move quickly because you got a lot of color coding to do here. So yesterday in class, we should have talked about abundance of elements. And if we didn't get to that yesterday, abundant is a word that means you have lots of it, or that's, if you're talking about categories, that's the categories that you have the most of. So it means most or lots of. So we're looking at, there's over 100 elements on the periodic table, but what we're concerned with is which ones make up most of the stuff around us here on Earth. Okay, so we have this sheet that has a little chart right here, and yours is not colored, but you're going to be coloring that in. It has a little description right here. So if you read each description, this one is about the crust. This one is about the atmosphere. Okay, this one is about the oceans, and this one is about cells or living things like plants and animals, etc. Okay, now some of these elements that we're going to be color coding aren't just in one category. So for example, oxygen here, whatever color you choose, I chose orange. So if you look here, I have orange for oxygen, and you want to hold off on coloring right now until you kind of understand everything so you don't make a mistake, okay? But mine is orange for oxygen, and that means whenever I come down here, oxygen also has to be orange. So whatever color you pick for oxygen, it's got to be that color on every one of these, okay? And oxygen happens to pop up on all four. So right now, go ahead and pick a color and color this box next to oxygen right here, whatever color you want. I picked orange. You could pick whatever you want. You're going to need a total of 11 colors. If you don't have 11 and you can come up with 10, your 11th color can be just white, like leaving it blank. I went ahead and used 11 colors though. So my first color is orange. Go down to the atmosphere, this one down here, and then color this box in orange right next to oxygen. Then go down to this one right here. Oxygen is also going to be orange, and oxygen down here, orange. Orange all the way across the board. Now I'm going to move pretty quick. You can pause this video if you need to. Silicon is only on this one, and I picked pink. So you put pink right here or whatever color you want. And you don't have to put it on any of the other ones because that element isn't included in these three. Next element is aluminum. I picked blue, so I colored it blue here. Aluminum is not in any of these three, so you only color it blue up here. Iron is gray, and it's only here, so it's not included in these three down here. Calcium is yellow for me. Okay, again, you could pick different colors. Just make sure whatever you color, you remember what that is going to be on your pie chart. Okay, and then for others, so others is kind of like the junk drawer. That means like a whole bunch of other elements. We're not going to list every single element that's in the crust. We're just going to list the ones that are most abundant, and then everything else is going to go in the other category. So for this category, that's going to be 9%, and I used green. And I used like a highlighter green because later on I'm going to use a dark green. But for this green, I used like a highlighter green. You can also do this in colored pencils and come up with different shades of colors. But just make sure it's obvious what, like if you do dark red, make sure that the light red is obviously a different red than the dark red. So then I come down to this one right here, the atmosphere. There's an element that wasn't up in the crust called nitrogen, and I colored that one red. Now, nitrogen is also in this bottom section right here. So you come next to nitrogen, whatever color you pick, also shade that box in that same color. And then if I come up here, oxygen should already be done. And then others should already be done, whatever color you picked for others. Here, we've already done oxygen. We have not done hydrogen, so this is where I use my dark green for hydrogen. Hydrogen is also in the bottom section here. So go to this box for hydrogen and color it the same color that you chose here. Chlorine, I picked purple, and sodium, black. Neither of those are anywhere else. They're only found in the oceans here, so you don't have to color code those anywhere except in the oceans. And then finally, others is the same color. And then finally, when we get into living things, we've already done oxygen. We have not done carbon. I picked brown for carbon, and that's the only box you'll color that color for carbon. Hydrogen, we've already colored in. Nitrogen, you should have already colored that in. And others, you should have already colored in. So at this point, you should have your colors all set up here. Okay, now I'm going to start with the Earth's crust. So the next thing to do is set this here. And mine's already filled in, but before you start filling things in, be very careful. The first thing I want to look at is this key right here. We're going to make sure these little boxes are colored the same color that we chose up here. So go ahead and color code all of that. And you can pause the video and then I'll move on. Okay, so you should have color coded all of this. Now, oxygen, for me, I chose orange. Now, you might have chosen a different color. Make sure your color, whatever color you chose up here, it matches up here, and then in these parts right here. So if we look here, it says oxygen makes up 47% of the crust. So 47 is going to be larger than all of these percentages here. So we're going to look for the largest section, which is this one. So I took my orange and I went around the edge. If you'd like to fill it in, you may. You don't have to. I can see that this part represents oxygen. Silicon is 28%, which is, if you look here, most of these are in order. It's 47, 28, 8, 5, 3. And then when it goes to others, that's 9%. So that doesn't really follow the pattern. So the last one is just going to be a little bit out of order. But once you find the section with the largest percentage, in this case it's oxygen, the next one will be going clockwise. So silicon will be this right here. And you'll use your color to outline that. And then the next one, if you look here, after silicon is aluminum, 8%. And that'll be the very next section after silicon going clockwise. And then iron, and then calcium. And then finally, this one's 9%. It didn't follow the order here because that's our last one. That's our kind of miscellaneous others. And this is a mixture of all kinds of elements that we're just not going to include because they're tiny amounts of them, not in abundance. So then this would be my 9% of other elements. And basically, you're going to continue doing the same thing. So if I slide down to this next chart right here, this one represents the three most abundant elements for the Earth's atmosphere. So you see here, the atmosphere is almost all nitrogen and oxygen, and then just a tiny, tiny amount, like 1% or even less, of a mixture of other things. So we're going to come to this graph right here, this pie chart. Oxygen for me was orange. So oxygen here is not the largest one. If you look, this is where you need to be careful because oxygen was 21% and nitrogen was 78%. So nitrogen is going to be the larger section, which will be red. So I've colored nitrogen red. And then this section right here represents nitrogen. So this big section kind of looks like Pac-Man. And then oxygen was 21%, roughly. And that will be this section right here. Then this tiny sliver right here is going to be colored for others, like miscellaneous elements. If you continue on, you have these two, and you're just going to use these colors to code in these sections right here. So this one is for Earth's oceans. What you should notice is oxygen is the most abundant, so oxygen is going to be the big piece right here. And then hydrogen will be this piece. And then chlorine will be this little sliver right here. And then an even smaller sliver is sodium, which for me was the black sliver right here. And then this little sliver right here was others. Now you go here to living organisms or cells. We start with oxygen is the largest one. So whatever color you pick for oxygen should be in this section. And then this section right here is carbon. So for me, it was brown. So color that in. And then hydrogen is right here. Okay. And then nitrogen is this small one right here. And then the last small one is going to be the other category. And so at this point, you should have everything color-coded on all 4 of your pie charts, and that the colors you chose here should be coordinated with the colors here. And if you were careful enough and followed my directions, on the pie chart, oxygen should be the largest one for the Earth's crust. And for the atmosphere, nitrogen, red for me, should be the largest portion of the pie chart for the atmosphere. Oxygen should be the largest portion for oceans. And oxygen is also the largest portion for living things. And then you just followed the order here on each of these. Okay, so now that you got everything color-coded, what you're going to do next is you're going to cut out some of the information we just color-coded. So, for example, you're going to cut out all your pie charts, and they'll look like this, okay? And you'll cut out the little, so this one is for Earth's crust, so you'll cut out the little text box that was on the other sheet for the crust, as well as the chart that's color-coded. So you'll have 4 sets that look like this with 3 pieces each. And we're going to glue those in, okay? So also make sure when you're cutting all this out, make sure you throw all your scraps and things like that away. I'm going to grab my IMB. The next page in our IMB would be page 23. So on page 23, what I'm going to do is I'll put the crust, the little reading or text at the top, and I'll title this the crust. Then I have a spot for my chart here, and then finally my pie chart. So you can tape or glue this in, and then the next page is going to be for the atmosphere. So you'll put, this one for the atmosphere on here, and you'll make sure you also get the little text box in your chart. Okay. Now, I haven't glued it in, but you're obviously going to glue that in. I will. I won't video that, though. On page 25 and 26, your next pages, you're going to do the oceans here and living organisms on page 26. Okay? So I'm going to pause the video and let you guys get all that glued in. All right, so now you should have everything cut out and glued in here. What we're going to do next is we're going to take the percentages for each one and kind of write that information in here, and that way you'll be able to see that. So oxygen was 47%, so we'll just go in the area for oxygen, and we'll just write 47%. You could do this. I'm doing it with a pencil in case I make a mistake. You can do it with something else if you want to. Silicon is 28%. Aluminum is 8%. Iron is 5%. And then calcium is 3%. And if you can't fit it in the area right there, what you could do is write it somewhere on the outside and just draw a line. And then other elements was 9%. So basically, you're going to continue on doing that for the other ones here. So this is 78% here. Oxygen, 21%. And then other is, whoops, I wrote others. I should have just put 1% for others. 1%. And then, of course, you'll do it with the other two. 85% oxygen, 10% hydrogen. Now, chlorine was 2%, so I'll write that right here, 2%. And then over here on this side, I need to write 2 things, or I'll write one up here. Sodium is 1%, and that goes to this one right here. And then other is 2%. Now my last one. Oxygen is 65%. Carbon is 18%. Hydrogen is 10%. Nitrogen, 3%. Other elements would be 4%. Okay, now that you have this done, you can visually see the most abundant elements in the crust, in the atmosphere, the most abundant elements in the ocean, and in living things or cells.